My background, I'm a solicitor. I'm Director of Careers and Employability here at Keele within the law school. And I'm going to talk to you today about a few of the options available to you. So, ideally, what can you do with a law degree? So, the legal field is actually quite diverse now. There's lots of different things that you can do. There's a myriad of career options, and it's not just as boring as it was back in medieval times when I qualified, and you could become a solicitor, you could become a barrister, and that was pretty much it. So there's lots more options available for you. So let's have a look at some of those options. So with a law degree, the obvious answer that most people think about is you can just become a lawyer. And yes, it can be that straightforward. And lots of people do a law degree, do their postgraduate, become a lawyer. But a lawyer is a really general term now. Actually, being a lawyer can mean many, many things. So on this slide, you'll see that I've actually got quite a few different people. All of these people studied at Keele. They are all our law alumni. So every single one of them, you'll see that some may have studied slightly more recently than others, but each of them have studied law at Keele. So if we start with Joel, so Joel Paddy comes from the Isle of Man, so a different legal jurisdiction. Joel has just qualified as a solicitor. I met Joel when he was still an undergraduate here. So Joel worked really hard. He looked at different options. He was really interested in tech. So when Joel graduated, he actually went and worked as a paralegal. And a paralegal is a type of lawyer. And you'll see that Nabil is also a paralegal. Now, Joel decided to work at a very different type of firm. He worked at an alternative business structure, so not a traditional law firm. And it was called Riverview Law, and it's now actually part of an accountancy firm. Riverview was very, very different, very tech orientated, and that helped Joel because he's then looked at doing a slightly different journey, and he became really interested in tech. So he thought about doing a master's in law and technology, but at the time there weren't many around. So he did his postgraduate studying to become a solicitor, and Joel has just qualified as a solicitor. He has been working at BCLP, Berwyn Cave Leighton Paisner. You can see why they abbreviated it. He's been a trainee there for a couple of years and literally qualified last week. So that's an international law firm. He was offered secondments globally. So a really exciting journey that Joel's been on. But it started at Keele and he actually went as a paralegal for a while. Now, Nabil next to him is currently a paralegal. And because of the diversity of routes to qualifying as a lawyer now, Nabil is actually working as a senior real estate paralegal, and he's working at Adelshaw Goddard in Manchester, so another national prestigious law firm. But Nabil has taken a similar route to Joel and how he started, but quite a contrast to Martha. So this is Martha at the top with the ivy in the background. Martha did her law degree at Keele, like everybody else, but she got a training contract and she chose to study part-time at the same time as doing her postgraduate course to become a solicitor. So she did it a really hard way. She was working full-time at the firm where she's qualified into, and she was working full-time and studying part-time at weekends and in the evening. But that meant that when Martha qualified, she'd done her training contract at the same time as studying, so she actually saved time, which was really valuable. Further, because Martha is really talented and really ambitious, Martha also did a further qualification, and Martha is a solicitor advocate. So at the same time as doing her training contract, when she qualified as a solicitor, Martha also became a solicitor advocate, which is really very different. Because if you look at these two guys here on the far right of my screen, Earl is a barrister. So Earl is in court pretty much every day. He's a criminal barrister. Again, he studied law at Keele, and we're very proud of all that Earl has achieved. He didn't take a direct route, but he won Barrister of the Year at Birmingham Law Society's Legal Awards last year. So Earl is a barrister at National Chambers, number 5 Chambers, and I'll talk about them a little bit later. Earl has been a really good friend to Keele, and he's mentored a number of our students, including this chap here, Alex Bailey. So Alex is usually not looking that serious, but he's a pupil barrister. That means he's a trainee barrister. So he's doing a 1-year pupillage at number 5. He's doing a totally different area of law to Earl. Earl is a criminal defence, and sometimes he does prosecutions for the CPF. But Alex is really interested in commercial work, and particularly in property work. They can go and stand in any court in the land and be heard. So can Martha. Joel and Nabil can't, because Joel is now a solicitor, but Martha is a solicitor advocate. So she can go and do a court hearing in the Supreme Court if she wanted to, if she was instructed in that case. So she has the benefit of being both a solicitor and also having the same rights of audience, the same rights in court as Earl, and that Alex will get. So Nabil and Alex are still on their training journey. Last but by no means least, we have a very accomplished commercial lawyer, Beth Casanelli. Beth did law at Keele, but Beth doesn't work in a law firm. Beth works for one of the big 4 accountancy practices. She works for Deloitte Legal. So she's an associate director here. That means she's basically very high up the command structure in Deloitte. She does a lot of commercial work. She trained at a Magic Circle law firm, which is one of the top tier law firms in England and Wales. And she pursued pensions work, and she's done a wide variety of commercial work, to the extent that she's now working for an accountancy practice, but as part of their legal arm. So it is not the case that to be a lawyer, you have to work in a law firm. You don't. If you want to be a solicitor, you can be a lawyer, a solicitor in an in-house legal department. You can be in a specialist legal department like Beth. You can go to chambers like Alex or Earl. There's a wide variety of places that you can go to. So those are some of our alumni. So let's talk generally about the skills that you can develop while you're doing your law degree. So I've talked about some of those roles, but studying law really gives you a different skill set. I know that when I was a law student, I approached things differently to some of my colleagues who were doing different areas. because we teach you to think in a particular way. And that's why when you're in a law firm, you have different skills. And when you're working as part of a team, you bring different things to the team. So, attention to detail. Your firm or your chambers is being paid a lot of money for your skill set. Your clients are paying a lot of money. So they expect you to read things. So the bad news is, if you don't like reading, a law degree is possibly not for you. And I don't mean just reading books. You are reading books, you are reading cases, you are looking at legislation. Being dyslexic is not a barrier. There are many, many extremely successful lawyers who have dyslexia. It is more that you need to understand you will be reading a lot, because you need to be able to read a vast number of sources and come up with a solution to the problem. You can't just say, okay, this is what the law is. We are, as lawyers, problem solvers. So my area of law is family law. I now supervise the students in our legal advice clinic. So all of our clients will come to us with a problem of some kind. It will vary. Most of them come with a problem about the breakdown of their marriage, because we run a divorce clinic. And so we are helping them to navigate that process, specifically the court process. So I am solving that problem for them. I'm telling them, or rather my students are telling them how they can, whether they are eligible to be divorced, how they can get divorced, how long it will take, the process, and we help them navigate the court system. How do we do that? We've done a lot of reading. We need to read the documents they give us. We need to read the marriage certificate. We need to know the new legislation. There's lots of different things. Sometimes I need to look at case reports. Sometimes I'm looking at something like the brand new legislation. The law on divorce changed fundamentally this time last year. And so I had to get my head around that at the same time as reading additional guidance from different sources, but then being able to train the students in that law, in those changes, how it will change the procedure. Often before the formal guidance had come out, because I needed to prepare them so that on day one we could start. Communication is key. Sometimes our clients are distressed, sometimes they're not listening properly to what we're saying. So we need to be able to communicate in ways that they understand. So I'm, as you can tell, a big fan of waving my arms around, if only to ensure that everyone's awake. But also diagrams, different ways of explaining things. There is so many ways in which we communicate. It's from facial expressions, it's from eye contact. If I was looking down here and not looking at the camera, you probably get slightly more bored. I'm getting really distracted by my bad hair day. So that's a distraction. How do we eliminate these distractions so that our clients can listen to us and hear what we're saying? I've joked about the reading. But you need to be organised, you need to be able to prioritise, you need to be able to understand what is more important. Is it the text you've just received from your friend? Is it the update on a social media feed? Is it the client sitting in reception? Is it the client that's hanging on and has been waiting for an answer on the phone for some time? And you need to be able to prioritise those things. And your law degree will help you with all of those things. So it's wider than just training you to become a lawyer. We don't train you, we teach you how to be critical, how to analyse things, how to look for the loopholes, not in a bad way, but to look at an argument and say, hang on, is that source reliable? Think about fake news. What is a reliable source? When you read something online, if you look at an email, you get a dodgy email, you know to look at the actual email address, not what it says it's from, but whether it is actually from an authentic email address. What's the reliability of that source? Is it just somebody spouting nonsense, or is it actually somebody expert in that field? What credibility do they have? Can you rely on them? So it's much wider than just how to interpret the law. We also teach you resilience, because there will be bumps along the way. Life is not perfect, and so because we are a small to medium-sized law school, we know our students, and so as part of that, the support, because the law is not an easy career. That's not to say you won't succeed. If you work hard, if you have the talent, then you will succeed, but there will be setbacks. We all have setbacks within our careers. And so being able to deal with those setbacks. When Earl goes into court, he doesn't win every case. Alex won't, Martha won't, I didn't. There's so much more that one can learn during the degree. And I've put in there IT skills. The law is really dynamic. I've talked about that major change to divorce law. I teach employment law at times. Employment law is constantly changing. If you think about the impact of the pandemic, we had entirely new concepts in law, like furlough, not having to work but still being paid, new things that develop. And so being able to source the information, being able to present information in a way that your clients understand, being able to harness IT. Law is very skilled, but there are some really, really boring bits that I had to do as a trainee, going through really boring documents, reading and reading and reading, that can now be done by artificial intelligence. That's not the death of the lawyer, that's the upskilling of the lawyer. One of our alumni actually works in this field as a technologist, and I'll talk about her in a moment. So, I've talked about the relatively obvious, the solicitor, the barrister, and then the solicitor advocate that comes in the middle. But actually, many lawyers have dual qualifications. So this photo is of two of our current students. So I was very proud to have been part of the coaching team. Zuli and Hannah made it to the national finals of a national negotiating competition run by CEDA, who you can see there on the slide, the Centre for Effective Dispute Resolution. So CEDA are one of the premier mediation organisations. So you might not have heard of mediation. Mediation is something that's called alternative dispute resolution. So there are currently massive delays with the court, partly because of COVID, partly because of a lack of judiciary. A lot of cases have been delayed. And so people are looking for an alternative way of sorting out their problems. Going to court is really expensive. You have to pay hundreds of pounds in court fees. You may have to wait months. So there are alternative ways of resolving a dispute. And so mediation is one of them. I'm a solicitor. I'm also a trained mediator. So I've qualified as a mediator because I was interested in this alternative way of practicing. And during the pandemic, a number of barristers, because not much was happening in court, they retrained as mediators, but also as arbitrators. So Zuli and Hannah have been trained in mediation and negotiation by CEDA. It was part of their prize for making it to the national finals. So a mediator is a very different role. As a solicitor or as a barrister, we are partisan. We are being paid by somebody to present a case, to go into court and to have advised them, using all that reading we did, on how we think it's going to proceed, the offers they ought to make, what the strengths and weaknesses of their case is. And then often we are the presenter at court. I am standing there saying to the judge, yes, but my client's view is this. We think this is our case. This is what we're asking for, and I'm using the mechanisms of the law to progress that case in my client's best interests. So completely partisan. Barrister does the same. An arbitrator is completely neutral, entirely different skill set. When I was training to be a mediator, I was literally having to sit on my hands at some stage, not just because of the arm waving, but because you are there as a neutral third party. You are facilitating two or more parties reaching an agreement. Rather than a judge imposing an agreement on them, they're able to explore potential settlements in an entirely confidential arena. The mediator asks, well, how would you feel about that offer? How do you think they're going to feel about the offer you're making? So really getting to the heart of the dispute about what people can do. So, for example, an apology is often part of a negotiated settlement in a mediation. You can't get an apology at court. Nobody can make you apologise. It's not a legal remedy. They can give you money. They can do a judgment in your favour, but they can't give you, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry that the goods we supplied were of less than satisfactory quality. I'm sorry that you lost that client because what we supplied to you was not good enough. That can help mend that relationship and actually take it further. And so mediation is increasingly attractive. Arbitration, it's like having a judge, but they deal with everything on paper. And they do impose a settlement on you. But those are entirely different roles that 50 years simply didn't exist. But they are avenues that as lawyers you can pursue. You don't have to be a solicitor or a barrister. You could be a mediator, you could be an arbitrator, and those skill sets are different. So I know that as a civil mediator, I use very different skills to being a family lawyer. I don't talk about feelings in family law. I do talk about feelings as a mediator because that helps me to understand the client's perspective. So think about your skill set. Lawyer is a very broad term. With a law degree, you can become a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Legal Executives. It's a different type of being a lawyer to being a solicitor or a barrister. You could also become a member of the Council of Licensed Conveyancers. They specialise very much in just property law and also probate. So that's an alternative career. Both are equally valid to being a solicitor or a barrister, And there are routes between all of those avenues to transfer. So, can you only be a lawyer? No, with a law degree, this is a collage of photos of some of our alumni and Tony McDade, who is CEO of Number 5 Chambers. And I'll talk about those people in a moment, because they've all taken a law degree, gone into legal fields, but not as lawyers. But what I'm going to do first is talk to you a little more about the barrister and solicitor distinction. I gave you a link to a Mentimeter at the beginning. I haven't seen any questions come up as yet, but if anybody would like to join the Menti, you literally just go to menti.com, menti.com, and I've got a code there, which is 44584476. And so you can ask questions anonymously there and I can field them. Ellie, I don't know if we've got any questions in the chat, as sadly I can't see it at the moment. Is there anything anybody would like to ask? I'll wait a few seconds. Just check the Menti. No? Okay, that's fine. I can come back to those later and I'm very happy to keep wittering on. So, barrister or solicitor. So, barristers, I showed you Earl with his pinstripe suit. I regret to say that that is almost the uniform of a barrister. They tend to wear large pinstripes, not really tight pinstripes, but very large pinstripe suits. Black tends to be the favoured colour, both for male and female barristers. You'll see in this photograph that we have two barristers outside the Royal Courts of Justice on the Strand. They are wearing their wigs. In open court, they have to wear wigs and gowns. Solicitor advocates don't have to wear wigs, but we can, well, I'm not actually a solicitor advocate, but my colleague is. They can wear tabs and gowns. But remember what I said about Martha? Martha can go into the same courts that Earl can go into and that these two barristers can go into. The main distinction is that barristers are self-employed. So they are not employed by the chambers at which they work. They have chambers as a way of organising them. So that guy that I showed you in the last slide, Tony McDade, he runs the chambers at which Earl and Alex work. They are self-employed. That means that they can decide when they work and when they don't work. If they finish court at 2 o'clock, they can go home. It's a different style of working. It's predominantly court-based, but not always. There are barristers that only write letters of advice and reports and that sort of thing in particular specialist areas. But barristers tend to be more court-based. However, a solicitor advocate will also be court-based. And so there's a large number of solicitors who become solicitor advocates because they work in the field of criminal litigation. And frankly, it's more cost effective for the firms if they're solicitor advocates, because they can do all the Crown Court hearings where the money is better for the firm than farming it out to a barrister. So solicitor advocates are employed by a firm. That means they get a paycheck at the end of each month, which, if you're a junior barrister, is a really important distinction. So the training routes are now quite different. So you can do an apprenticeship for either route. To become a barrister, you have to have done either a law degree, or if you choose not to do a law degree, you have to do a conversion course, because the Bar Standards Board that regulates barristers and the training routes says you need to have done an intensive induction into the law. It's really, really important for you to do that. So, law degree, 3 years. Then go on to the bar training course. There are different providers for the bar training course, and they call it slightly different things. It all used to be called the bar professional training course, but now they call them things around a 1-year bar course or bar training course. So 3-year law degree, bar training course, and then you do a 1-year pupillage, and that's what Alex is doing at the moment. So what Alex is doing is, for the first 6 months, they shadow a more senior barrister, and they help that barrister with their preparation, with the preparation of, for example, cross-examination, of doing notes for them before they go into court, researching obscure case law, all of those sorts of things they do to help. But then in their second 6 months, strangely called their second 6, they can actually go into court themselves, and that's when they can start earning money. So the first 6 months you get a bit of a grant. So Chambers funds you so that you can still eat. And in the second 6, you still have that grant, but you can start doing your own advocacy. You can do junior cases at court and get the flavour of it. There is an apprenticeship route to become a barrister, but it's not, although it's there on paper, nobody's actually launched it yet. So watch this space. So to become a barrister, law or non-law, plus the bar training course, plus a 1-year pupillage. The route to becoming a solicitor has, over the last couple of years, changed quite radically. So I talked about a postgraduate course that Nabil and Joel had done and Martha had done. That's no longer mandatory. So there's now this new route. You can do any degree you like, but then you have to do SQE1, Solicitor's Qualifying Exam 1 and SQE2, and I'll talk about them in a moment. In effect, you need to have been trained on how to pass those. So a law degree, if we look at the contents of those exams, helps dramatically with that. But it also helps dramatically with the acquiring of this 2 years qualifying work experience. So you do a degree. You can then set SQE1, do SQE2, and then do your qualifying work experience. You can do some of your qualifying work experience before you do SQE1. As long as you do SQE1 before you do SQE2, they really don't mind. I would say that you need to have done some qualifying work experience before you do SQE2 because of the nature of the content. So you've got 2 sets of exams. As I've said, it is a brave new world. They've only been running it for just over a year, and there's quite a lot of debate about it. So if I talk you through these exams, you'll see why I think a law degree equips you or gives you the fundamental basics to then develop the skills to be able to then sit SQE1 and 2. We as a law school are not a preparation provider for the SQE. These are multiple choice questions. We have a wonderful, rigorous law degree that investigates and explains different areas of law over and above the basics that are examined in the SQE. Because the SQE, you will see, these are the only areas of law that it examines. Now, I'm a family lawyer. There's nothing here that would equip me to be a family lawyer. And so, having studied family law at undergraduate level, having then done further work in family law, having done more at postgrad, I understood what it meant to be a family lawyer. Now, some of these were really useful. So, for example, if I was doing a financial case about family business, which I did do, then actually understanding the company accounts was really handy. So understanding business law and practice was useful. Understanding trusts. These are the foundational subjects. All of these are covered within our law degree at Keele. But they're not just the core areas of law that we've always taught. They're also covered within our professional legal practice pathway. So, for example, business law and practice is something that we've developed here that takes what you've learned in contract law and in company law, puts it together with commercial law and teaches you about director's duties, but which forms you have to complete to become a company director. What are your reporting obligations? Property law and practice, that is something you're examined in, the SQE, but goes further than just land law and equity and trusts. I cover some of this in residential conveyancing. So we have a number of these coming together. But imagine sitting an exam on this if you hadn't done a law degree. That would be seriously scary. So the law degree still helps you with those fundamental core areas. So that's SQE1. Now, it's 2 papers, they're multiple choice. They contain 240 questions that you have to answer in 360 minutes. So you have a minute and a half per question. So it's really high pressure. There's then SQE2, and this is very practically based. And this is where, for example, experience in practice from your qualifying work experience will help you. Because if you've interviewed clients, say in the law clinic, then doing an interview and an attendance note afterwards is relatively straightforward because you know how to handle a client. These are simulated, these aren't multiple choice, these are simulated skills assessments. Legal writing. So in contrast to writing an essay, legal writing is very much writing a letter that a client will understand. And that doesn't mean squeezing every bit of information you've ever learned into a letter. It's explaining concepts in ways that a client will understand them. So that's where the clinic experience comes in really useful. So the final part to qualifying as a solicitor involves this qualifying work experience. And so our clinic can help you acquire qualifying work experience. It doesn't amount to a phenomenal amount of your 2 years qualifying work experience, but what it does do is helps you understand those skills, and it makes you highly employable to then help you to acquire further work experience and qualifying work experience. So it's useful in that way. One of the other routes that is available is the solicitor apprenticeship. And so there is now the option for graduates to hop onto that after their law degree as a graduate entry solicitor apprenticeship, but you apply for the job rather than the course. So I've outlined whistle-stop tour, apologies, how you qualify as a solicitor or as a barrister. But I also tempted you with this glamorous range of people. So looking at the alumni Antony that we have here, starting here with Adam in his bow tie. So Adam Mawadi is now a night reporter at the Telegraph. He did a law degree at Keele, but whilst Adam was doing his law degree, he became a social media ambassador. That was a job he did for the university. And one of his posts about prevaricating and not really getting down to his revision went viral. And Adam got a job at Legal Cheek. And then from that job, he got a job at The Lawyer, which is a very prestigious legal publication. Then he became senior reporter at The Lawyer, litigation reporter. And a couple of months ago, he started at the Telegraph with a law degree. He didn't want to become a lawyer. He wanted to do something else, and he found what he wanted to do. Amy Brody is a senior policy advisor. She works in the Department of Social Care, Health and Social Care, so really important and an area that we're quite active in. Our head of school has literally written a book on social work law. Kiran Patel. Kiran is a senior policy advisor in the policy negotiator, in the Department for International Trade. He represents the UK at a government level. So really interesting. Naomi only graduated a couple of years ago, and she works at international law firm Evershed Sutherland, but she doesn't work as a lawyer. No, she works as a legal technologist technician. So she's taken her law degree and she's harnessed the growth of tech and innovation within a law firm. And she's working in one of the most exciting areas. She's working within a really dynamic department at Evershed who have been at the cutting edge of legal tech. And for them, it's about enhancing service delivery. It's about making lawyers work more efficiently, getting AI to do the boring stuff so that you can do the more interesting technical work. And she helps the techie people understand what the lawyers work, but she also designs some of it. So really interesting role. She literally only graduated a couple of years ago. She was one of my clinic students in the Commercial Legal Advice Clinic. Tony, last but definitely not least, not one of our alumni, but very much a friend to Keele Law School. He's president of Birmingham Law Society at the moment, but more importantly, he's chief executive officer of Number 5 Chambers, so one of the largest national barristers' chambers. He doesn't have a degree. Tony started off as a barrister's clerk. He was one of those people who told Earl where to go in the nicest possible way. So you need to be at this court. And he would negotiate fees with solicitors for how much Earl was going to be paid. He now runs the chambers. You can see from the profile, he's a bit older now. He also earns considerably more than many of the barristers in his chambers. So being a barrister is not necessarily the route to huge riches. It can be, likewise a solicitor, but there's a vast diversity in the law where you can use a law degree in different ways. And the law is not one single field, it is multifaceted. So do look at all those different things. I've put here some sources of information. If you're interested in becoming a solicitor, then the solicitor's qualifying examination, there's a link there to the SRA website. I've also put some people here for you to look at. So number 5 chambers in particular is helpful, but also some other people. And do feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I'm very happy to help. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my slides, I hope. Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to have, oh, I can see a Q&A chat box. No questions. Okay. Would anyone like to ask me anything? You can do it on the Menti if you like. So if I put menti.com 44584476, I put that in the Q&A in the chat box if anybody would like to look at that. No questions too silly, honestly. Ask as many as you like. Ah, I've got one. Would I be disadvantaged in the workplace if I took a conversion course instead of the 3-year degree? No. It depends on what you want to get. Within a law degree, you study more than just the core foundations of law. So, for example, family law, employment law, they're not there on the SQE syllabus. They're not there on the conversion course. So if you want to learn more about different areas of practice and the nuances of those different areas, then a law degree is the way of exploring those in a lot more depth. There are also some really interesting academic subjects. So, for example, one of my colleagues runs a module on gender sexuality in the law. And so examining some of the concepts, is law by its very essence gendered? Why? Where's that come from? Looking at things like family law, obviously I'm a family lawyer. You could qualify and become a family lawyer and not having ever studied family law. For me, that would be really, really scary. Also, the funding situation. If you're doing a 1-year conversion course, takes you a year longer. It's another set of fees you would have to fund. But law firms recruit from law graduates and non-law graduates. So it's very much up to you what you want to get from the experience. So there's also things like, I haven't talked about particularly, negotiating competitions, mooting competitions, so advocacy, that sort of court-based thing that you get more exposure to as you're going through your degree. But if you have a burning desire to do a history degree or an English degree or a science degree or whatever degree you want, then obviously come to Keele. But do look at other areas and then come and look at what's involved in the law degree. What is there that piques your interest? So there's not a disadvantage, it's just different routes and one takes longer. But I have colleagues from both routes, both here and in practice. Just going to refresh the Menti. Thank you to the person who used the Menti. Any other questions? I'm happy to talk more about, for example, the negotiating competition. So what we did there, that was an internal competition. We had some first years who had a go. We had some second years. We put 2 teams through to the regionals, and we got a team through to the national finals. So that was really exciting. Then they got the training at Cedar in central London that we obviously funded, and then we had a weekend in Exeter where they had to do 3 different negotiations, which was really, really hard work. And one of them was a 3-way, so there were 3 different parties. So that was really interesting to see how they worked with that, but seeing how the students' confidence, just every time they were doing it, they were getting better and better and better. And those are some of the fun things that you can experience during a law degree. Okay, so if there's no more questions, I'll wrap it up there, but thank you very much for joining. Thank you for staying awake during it. If you want to keep in touch, do feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. So it is literally just Catherine Edwards and Keele, and I tend to share quite a few things about careers and what I was talking earlier about the reliable sources. So I've given you some of those there, and hopefully you'll get a copy of the slides.